my screen. So the topic is conflict management. Now, at first, let me explain you what is a conflict. A conflict arises due to differences in our opinion, due to differences in our thoughts. We are different individuals, isn't it? And each and every one of us has our own opinions, has each and every person, each and every person has his or her own opinion, his or her own perspective. So sometimes we might not agree to a certain things, and due to the differences in the opinion, in the thought process, in our perspectives, in due to differences in interest, needs and wants, sometimes conflict might arise. Okay, a conflict might arise due to these differences because we are different individuals and we have different lifestyles, we have different wants, needs, requirements. So accordingly, we live our own life. And when two people communicate with one another, they might not agree to a certain things because of the differences in their lifestyle or opinions, etc. In that particular situation, an argument or a conflict might arise. Okay, when there's a clash between two individuals, when there's a problem between two individuals, when there's an argument between two individuals, that is what conflict is. When you disagree to something or when you argue with someone, that is what conflict is. Okay, now it's quite normal to have a conflict because we are different individuals. So sometimes we might have a conflict or we might have a serious disagreement. Okay, now in order to manage this kind of situations, what do we have to do? Okay, the process by which all the disputes are resolved or all the problems are solved, that is known as conflict management. Okay, the process by which all the disputes are resolved, all the problems are solved, and which helps us to figure out a solution, that is what conflict management is. Okay, so whenever there is a conflict, whenever there is a serious disagreement, or whenever there is any kind of argument, we should try to resolve that particular problem, and that's what conflict management is. Now, of course, we should not uh, argue, or we should not uh, create this kind of a situation. We should always try to discuss and find out a solution, figure out a solution. But sometimes you might have a serious disagreement, you might have an argument with someone. In that particular situation, you need to manage the conflict. If you do not want the situation to grow serious, okay, so in that particular situation, what do you have to do? You have to apply certain techniques in order to manage the situation and also to figure out a solution. So conflict is a part of almost everyone's life and all the organization, because uh, because of the differences in the opinions. Conflict is something that is very common, and because conflict is very common, there are certain techniques that are used in order to resolve the conflicts. Okay, the key management skills involve using different tactics depending on the situation, negotiation, and creative thinking. How will you be able to manage a conflict, or how will someone be able to manage a conflict? Depending upon the situation, depending upon the seriousness of the situation, various tactics can be used. Various tactics such as negotiation, creative thinking, a discussion can be used in order to resolve the conflict. A properly managed conflict can help to minimize the interpersonal issues. It can minimize the problems. Okay, it can also minimize the uncertainties. It can also help to enhance the satisfaction of the clients. It can enhance client satisfaction, and it can also produce better business outcomes. If you are able to manage a conflict properly, a well managed conflict will always help the people or the organization to enhance their business, to produce better business outcomes. Okay, but a conflict which cannot be managed properly might create a lot of problems in the future. So that is why you must not leave a conflict. If you see that there's a conflict, if there is a conflict, there must be a solution also to resolve the conflict. Okay, so a conflict must not be left. It is a serious matter. Even if it is not a major conflict, even if it is a minor conflict, it should not be ignored. It should be taken care of. It should be managed in order to avoid any kind of future uncertainties, or in order to avoid any kind of difficulty. Okay, because a conflict, if not managed, can create a lot of problem for the people of the organization, and also it can hamper the growth and development of the organization. Now I am going to explain you how to resolve a conflict in a workplace. How will you be able to manage a conflict in your workplace? So when there is a conflict, there's a reason behind it, isn't it? When there's a problem, there's a reason behind it. You have to figure out what is the source of the conflict. This is my first point. Clarify what is the source of the conflict. If there's a problem, there has to be a reason behind it. So the first step to resolve a conflict is to figure out the problem, is to figure out the source of conflict, is to figure out what has caused that particular conflict. Now, when you will be able to figure out the cause of the conflict, you will be able to understand how the issue can be solved. You can figure out how will you be able to help help to resolve the conflict. Okay, it's not necessary that all the time you have to solve your own conflicts. Sometimes you might also have to resolve the conflict of two different parties. You can be the third party. You can be the third person. Okay. Sometimes when you see that problems are growing day by day between two different parties at your workplace, two different people, two different groups at your workplace, you might have to resolve the conflict. If you are a manager, okay, if you are a manager, you have to do so. If you are a team leader, you have to manage conflicts, okay, in order to work peacefully and in order to work in a team. You have to sometimes manage conflicts of two other parties, two different parties. Sometimes you have to manage your own conflicts, and sometimes you also have to manage to other parties' conflicts so that you can work together peacefully, properly, and so that you can work in a team. Okay, if you are the manager, if you are the team leader, okay, it would be your responsibility to look after your team, to look after the organization. So if there's a conflict which would eventually hamper the growth and development of the organization, you will have to figure out how to resolve the conflict. And the first step to resolve any conflict is to figure out what is the source of the conflict, what is the actual problem, what has made the two parties argue with one another. Why has the conflict arose? Okay, so you have to figure out the source of the conflict, you have to figure out the issue, you have to figure out the cause of the conflict, which will further help you to resolve the conflict. Next point is to find a safe and private place to talk. Now, when there is a conflict, you must not involve a lot of people, because involvement of a lot of people would might not help you to resolve the conflict. Okay, when a lot of people are involved in a particular thing, the problem would increase rather than decrease. So that is why you must not include a lot of people and try to resolve the conflict. Try to resolve a conflict in a safe and a private place, so that there's no one there's no one to interrupt, there's no one to disturb. Okay, you must try to solve the problems peacefully. For that, you need a safe and a private place. You need a good place. You cannot resolve the conflict in the middle of the road. You cannot resolve a conflict in a conference, in a meeting, during a meeting. You cannot do so. If you want to resolve a conflict, you have to find out the place for that particular conflict and do not involve a lot of people. Suppose you have to resolve the conflict between Mr. A and Mr. B. So you can take Mr. A and Mr. B to a place where nobody would disturb three of you, and then you can discuss what is the problem and how to proceed, how to figure out a solution. Next is listen actively and let everyone have their say. Now, communication is something that is very important to resolve a conflict. If you do not communicate properly, you won't be able to find out a solution. You won't be able to resolve the problem. You won't be able to resolve the conflict. So that is why you have to be a good communicator. You must listen to the problem properly. In order to understand the problem, you have to listen to the problem carefully and also let everyone say or share their opinion. If you are the third person who has to resolve the conflict, you have to listen to each and every person properly. If there's a problem between five people, okay, five different people, they're having some problem, they're having a conflict, they're having some serious disagreement in between them, and you are responsible to solve the problem. How will you be able to do so? You have to take them to a place, you have to interact with them, you have to listen to each and every individual. You cannot be like, I'm going to listen to Mr. A and B, I'm not going to listen to the rest of the three people. You have to give them equal opportunity and listen to each and everyone, and in that way you would be able to resolve the conflict without being partial to anyone, okay, without being partial. So you should not be partial, you should not pick up your favorites. When there's a conflict, it's a problem and you have to solve the problem without being partial, so that each and everyone is happy, so that each and everyone is satisfied. Okay, so you must be concerned about each and every person's thought regarding the conflict and then take a decision. And if it's your own conflict with someone, what you can do is again listen to him, listen to Mr. B. You and Mr. B has a problem. You and Mr. B had an argument, and now you want to discuss your problem and then you want to resolve the conflict, isn't it? In that case, you have to listen to the other person would have to listen to you, and you have to let the other person speak. You have to listen to the other person so that you come to know what is his opinion or what is his thought, but peacefully. Everything should be done in a peaceful environment. Next is investigate the situation. Okay, now after listening to the concerns from both the parties, you can take some time and investigate the case. Okay, first of all, you have to listen to them. Until and unless you do not listen to them, you will not have an idea regarding their opinions or thoughts. Okay, so that is why after you listen to them, the next step is to investigate the situation. After listening to them, you have to take some time and investigate the whole case, investigate the whole situation. Okay, do not jump to a conclusion abruptly. Okay, do take some time, and investigation is very necessary. You have to take some time to take the decision, to take an appropriate or proper decision. Do not just jump, or do not just come to a conclusion immediately. Take some time, okay, before you give any kind of verdict. Before the final verdict, you should take some time and investigate and also think. Okay, next is to, after you had a conversation with the parties, after you had investigated the situation, there are different ways of investigation. Okay, you can dig deeper and find out what has happened, what had happened. Also, you can talk to the people, you can ask them individually, you can have a conversation with the people who are involved in the conflict individually and listen to them and try to understand. So that's how you can investigate and dig deeper into the problem, and in that way you will be able to find out the underlying conflict sources. You'll be able to find out the unknown sources of the conflict, which will help you to resolve the conflict soon. But do not be like, I am going to resolve it today itself. You need to take some time. Do not jump to a conclusion. Just just in a second or just in few minutes. Okay, you need to take time, think, and if further investigation is necessary, then you can do so. Okay, and after that you need to determine ways to meet the common goal. You need to figure out certain ways to meet the common goal. Now Mr. A has some problem, Mr. B has some problem, Mr. C has some problem. After you have listened to all of them, after you have investigated the problem, now you have to figure out certain way to meet their common goal. Okay, so that everybody is happy and satisfied, so that so that it does not hamper the organization. So you have to figure out a you have to figure out a common way. You have to figure out a common way to meet the common goal. You need to first of all determine ways to meet the common goal. Okay, so yeah, you need to have a common objective, which is resolving the issue and ensuring it does not resurface. Okay, that's your common objective, that's your objective. Now you have to figure out how would you be able to resolve the problem, how would you be able to solve the problem, and also uh, which would be helpful to each and every one who is involved in the conflict. Okay, so determine ways to meet the common goal. So for that, what you can do is you can again have a discussion with the people who are involved in the conflict. You can have a discussion with them, and you can figure out a common goal. Okay, they would again give their solution, that this is how I want the problem to be resolved, and the other party would also give some opinions, his or her opinion regarding how to resolve the situation. And after that you can listen to them, and then you can take a decision. You have to just try to come to a common point. You have to just try to meet the common goal, and that's how you will be able to solve the problem. Next is agree on the best solution and determine the responsibilities each party has in the resolution. Now the next step after you determine ways to meet the common goal. So each and every person will share their own opinion, share their own thought regarding how the conflict can be managed or resolved, and you would also have certain opinions regarding the same. After you collect all the necessary all the opinions, and after you listen to all the ideas and opinions, then agree on the best solution and determine responsibilities each party has in the resolution. Okay, so suppose there are 5 people involved in the conflict. So each and every person will have their own opinion regarding how to resolve the conflict, isn't it? So after you listen to all of them, you can agree on the best solution. You can agree on the best solution and try to determine the responsibilities each party has in the resolution. Okay, managing and resolving conflict can be sometimes very difficult, but if you follow these steps, it would definitely help you to resolve a conflict easily. Sometimes it might take some time, but if you try to follow a particular way, follow the necessary steps to resolve the conflict, you would definitely be able to do so. And when you agree to the best solution, okay, after you listen to the solution, then you have to identify each and every solution and then agree to the best, and then you need to identify the solutions which each party can live with. Okay, so you have to be someone who can provide a solution without any kind of differentiation. Okay, you have to treat everyone equally and then take a decision accordingly. Okay, you have to be someone who listen to everyone and also takes a decision which would make everybody happy, which would be beneficial for the parties who are involved in the conflict and also for the organization. Next is to evaluate how things are going and decide preventive strategies for the future. Okay, now once you agree on the best solution, once you have the solution, okay, now the last step is to evaluate how things are going and decide preventive strategies for the future. You have to also keep a check whether everyone is doing their work or not, as it was decided. Okay, because you had reached a conclusion, there was a solution of the conflict was resolved, isn't it? There was a solution and everybody agreed to it. Now up to a certain period, you also have to keep a check on the things, that whether the things are going properly or not, whether everybody is following the decision that was taken or not, whether everybody is following the rules or not. Okay, and also you have to take certain preventive measures so that that particular conflict does not arise in the future. Yes, there might be another conflict again in the future, but you must make sure when you solve a conflict once, that particular problem must not arise in the future again, whatever the conflict is. Okay, whatever the conflict is, whenever you take a decision, whenever you resolve the conflict, your solution uh, should be strong enough so that the conflict does not arise in the future again. Because if the conflict arise in the future again, you have to again follow the same process and you will be wasting your time. In that way, it's a wastage of time. If you have to resolve a same conflict every now and then, so it's a wastage of time, energy. It's a wastage of resources, time, energy. So that is why when you resolve a conflict, when you find out a solution, when you figure out a solution, make sure that the solution is strong enough and so that the conflict does not arise in the future. Okay, so these are the certain things you need to take care of in order to resolve a conflict. Okay, these are only some of the points. It's not necessary that you have to follow all these steps in order to resolve a conflict. There are other ways as well, but these are some of the important ways, some of the good ways to resolve a conflict. But just remember, when there's a conflict, you need to resolve it, you need to solve the problem, you need to figure out the source of conflict, you need to bring the parties together, you need to discuss and then figure out a solution, listen to everyone and try to figure out a solution without being partial, without being partial, and then also make sure that the conflict does not arise in the future, because if the same conflict arises in the future again, you would again have to go through everything which you had already gone through. So this is something that you should remember. All right, any doubts, students, regarding conflict management? This is not a complicated process. This is not a complicated topic. It's an easy one. So once you go through and read everything, just remember the points. Okay, so you can also write it in your own words. You can use your own ways of resolving a conflict. It's just a basic, it's just a basic way of resolving a conflict. You can also add your own ideas. Okay. Any doubts regarding conflict management? If not, then I shall proceed. Okay. So I had already told you that I would be also explaining you telephone etiquette. Okay. So let me quickly explain you this particular topic as well. Now, etiquette is defined as the formal manners and rules that are followed in social or professional setting. Etiquette is a particular way of behaving in a social setting, in a professional setting. These are the rules and regulations that we must follow when we are in a public place, when we are in a professional setting, or when we are in a formal setting. Okay, that's what etiquette is. Rules and regulations are a certain kind of behavior that must be followed in a social or professional setting or in a public place. Okay. Telephone etiquette. Now, what is telephone etiquette? Telephone etiquette is related to the rules and regulations associated with telephone or your mobile phone. Okay, we all use mobile phones, and mobile phones are a very important part of our life, isn't it? We cannot survive without mobile phones. Now, when we use our mobile phones, especially in public places, we need to understand how to use the mobile phones or the phones appropriately. Sometimes we also have to use telephone. Okay, sometimes we have to use a telephone, maybe at our workplace. So you also need to know how to handle the telephone, and of course you need to know how to handle your mobile phone. Okay, so there are certain rules and regulations associated. So I would like to explain you the rules and regulations that you must follow uh, when you are in a professional or formal setting. These are some of the etiquette. Okay, cell phone and telephone etiquette. These are some of the telephone and cell phone etiquette. Use your cell phone or telephone in an inoffensive way to others. It is your responsibility and not of others. When you're using your phone, okay, when you use your phone, you must not offend anyone. Okay, you can definitely use your phone anywhere, but you must not offend anybody. It's your responsibility to maintain decency. You have to use your phone in an appropriate manner. You must not offend anyone by using your phone. Okay. Next is, if someone asks you to turn your cell phone or telephone down or off, you must accept it in good faith and not an attempt to dominate you. If you are in a public place and if you're having a conversation over the phone, and if somebody asks you to turn down or turn off your phone, must not be offended. You should not be offended. You must accept it in a good way, in a good faith, and do not think like the other person is trying to dominate you. Okay, you must accept it in a good faith. If the conversation is very important, then you can walk away from that particular person. That person might be disturbed because you're having a conversation over the phone, so that is why that person might be disturbed. So that is why that person has asked you to turn off or turn down your phone. So do not argue with that particular person. If somebody asks you to do so, then do it. There's nothing to be offended. Stay away from from others while talking over the phone, or if that is not possible, talk in a soft and dignified voice. So whenever you are having a conversation over the phone, stay away from people. Nobody is interested to listen to your conversation, so stay away from people. And if suppose you are at your workplace and you cannot move from your place, in that case, even if you're having a conversation, especially when you're having a conversation over the telephone, over the landline phone, in that case you won't be able to move, isn't it? So in that case, you can talk in a soft and a dignified voice. Anyways, whenever you have a conversation over the telephone, you must talk in a soft manner. The next point is related to that only. Do not talk too loudly. Whenever you're having a conversation over the phone, I have seen a lot of people, they talk too loudly. This is something that should be totally avoided. Do not put your phone on speaker when you're around people. Now, this is something that should not be done. Okay, never ever put your phone on speaker when there are people around you. When you're at your room, when you're at your personal space, then you can do whatever you want to. You can turn on the speaker, but whenever you are in a public place, do not turn on your speaker. Next is, do not talk about personal details in public. Now, never ever talk about personal details in public, because your details can be misused by someone. So that is why, even if you're sharing some kind of details in a public place, make sure that there's nobody around you. Okay, you have to look left, right, and then share the details so that nobody can listen to you, and so that nobody can misuse your information. Do not multitask. While having a conversation over the phone, do not multitask. Do not take a call while you're driving, while you're shopping, while you're crossing the road, while you're doing some banking transactions, because this might cause harm to you as well as to others. So that is why do one at a time. Take the call or drive or take the call. Okay. So you are not supposed to multitask while using the phone. You must know where not to use your cell phone. In some places, you are not supposed to use your cell phone, like in the library, in the classroom, during lectures, in movie theaters, in meetings. You're not supposed to use your cell phone in these places. So you must know when you are not supposed to, in which places you are not supposed to use your cell phone, and you should follow it. You must not use your cell phones in those places. Do not use your phone while having a meal with someone. While you're having your dinner or your lunch, while you're having your meal, never ever use your phone. If it is very important, if you have to take the call, then do let the other person know that I have to take this call. This is very important, and just make it short. Make your conversations short, because the other person would feel ignored if you constantly use your phone while having your meal. Put your cell phone off or to silent mode at the movie theater. Now, this is something very important. At the movie theater, you must turn on your phone, or at least turn on the silent mode. Learn to text. Okay, whenever somebody calls you, and you suppose you are in a place where you cannot receive the call, so in that particular situation you can text. So learning to text would help you to respond to someone in a place where you cannot take the call. So you can just say that currently I'm busy, I'll call you back after some time. Okay. When you get official calls, quickly take the calls. Okay. You must take the calls within 3 rings. So quickly take the calls when you get official calls. Greet people over the telephone. When you call somebody or when you receive the call, do not forget to greet the people. Okay. Listen carefully and respond politely. So you must be a good listener, and also you must respond in a polite manner. Do not eat, chew, drink while having a conversation over the phone, because it's a bad manner and the other person can make out if you eat something or drink something. Do not make sound while placing the receiver. When you use the landline phone, do not make sound while placing the receiver. Use the phone properly. Do not misuse it. Okay. Next is don't disconnect the call while the other person is talking. This is a bad manner. You must listen and then you must disconnect. Once the other person uh, is done, then you can disconnect. But while the other person is saying something, do not disconnect the call. The last point is try not to keep the other person on hold. If required, then inform the person beforehand. So try not to keep the other person on the other side on hold. But if it is required to, then do inform the other person that I'm keeping you on hold. Please wait for some time. I'm keeping you on hold. So students, these are some of the rules and regulations related to phone or cell phone, because it's a cell phone. Phones are a very important part of our life. We cannot live without our phone. We carry our phones everywhere. So that is why you must know certain things, when not to use the phone and how to use the phone appropriately. And these are the things you must take care of, especially in a professional or in a formal setting or in a public place. Okay. Any doubts, students? The session might be disconnected at any moment.